some clarification, and in some cases requires some responses. There are three of them. The first one relates to the issue of the CLOSAG threat to go on strike because of the appointment of a registrar for the births and deaths registry. The second one relates to a statement read by the president of the Ghana Journalists Association yesterday regarding reports of some assaults on a number of journalists. And the third relates to a directive that President Mahama issued last week for the Minister of Finance to settle maturing coupons for Ghanaian bondholders, and also the directive for the minister to reactivate the sinking fund as a mechanism for addressing our debt situation. So these are the three matters on which I will be addressing you. After that, when the floor is open, if you have any other questions that you think require responses, you can ask them. Now, on the CLOSAG matter, for quite some time, CLOSAG has been engaging government and insisting that the registrar of the births and deaths registry should be removed and replaced by a civil servant. Currently, the registrar there is Mr. Samuel Adumbotre, who was appointed by the president. CLOSAG, however, in spite of their demands, have not been able to indicate which legal basis informs the demand they are making. Government has enormous respect for organized labor, including CLOSAG, and we are willing at every point in time to engage, to dialogue, and find amicable solutions to any impasse or disputes that may arise. We are also very much committed to enhancing the welfare of Ghanaian workers. Indeed, I have only come from the Ministry of Finance, and I'm aware that they are entering negotiations as I speak to determine the minimum wage and the base pay. And this has been done because of government's commitment to ensuring that Ghanaians or Ghanaian workers have decent working conditions. We are also committed to ensuring regulatory compliance so that the work environment for Ghanaian workers is enhanced, is improved, and is one in which they can give off their very best. That said, we also welcome suggestions and opinions from Ghanaian workers through their labor organizations on how we can fine-tune our governance processes. But it must be pointed out that everything that government does must be based on law, must be guided by law. In fact, all of us as Ghanaians are enjoined to carry ourselves and conduct our activities on the basis of Ghanaian law. So when CLOSAG makes a specific demand for some action to be taken in respect of appointments to certain government organizations, they must do so on the basis of law. So you may ask where the law stands on all of this. We have engaged CLOSAG. We have made it known to them that we believe that the president has acted in accordance with Ghanaian law. Now, the births and deaths registry does not exist in isolation. It's an entity set up by law and governed by law. Indeed, the most recent law that governs the activities of that department is the Registration of Births and Deaths Act 2020, which is Act 1027. And this act sets out in detail how the activities of that organization are to be conducted. And in fact, when it comes to the appointment of a registrar, who essentially is the head of that department, Section 2 of Act 1027 makes it clear how it ought to be done. The contention of CLOSAG is that the registrar position is a civil service position. That has to be backed by a specific provision in law. Now, if you read the relevant section of this law, Section 2, which deals with the appointment of the registrar of births and deaths, Section 2.1 says, the registry shall have a registrar of births and deaths. Section 2.2 says, the president shall, in accordance with Article 195 of the Constitution, appoint the registrar. Now, you may seek to inquire what Article 195 says. Article 195 simply gives the president power to make appointments, and in some instances allows him to delegate that power to other entities, individuals, or organizations to do. And in the specific instance of the birth and death registry, the law governing the operations of that, the law governing the operations of that entity spells out clearly who should make the appointment. It says the president, and the president has acted in accordance with the 1992 Constitution. Now, Section 2.3 says the president shall, in appointing a person as the registrar, have regard to the relevant academic qualification, experience, and knowledge of that person in civil registration. The registrar shall hold office on the terms and conditions specified in the letter of appointment. So, the criteria for that appointment is clearly spelled out in Section 2 of this Act. CLOSAC has not questioned the competence of the current occupant of the position of registrar. They only say that he is politically exposed. But I have just read the law to you, and you, as journalists, I'm sure, have capacity to dig up this law and read it for yourself. There is no way that it is said that the position ought to be occupied by a civil servant. And Mr. Adumbotre is a highly experienced official who in the past has served as district chief executive under the Mills administration. And he has many years of public service experience. And he has requisite academic qualifications to hold that particular position. So it is the view of government that whilst we respect our partners in organized labor and seek to dialogue on all relevant matters, in this particular instance, the president has acted in accordance with Ghanaian law. And for that reason, there cannot be a reason why Mr. Adumbotre should be removed only because he is not a civil servant. There is no provision that says that the position is reserved for civil servants. If it is the view of CLOSAC that in the past civil servants have occupied it, it does not mean that any other person apart from a civil servant cannot occupy that position. And we need to act strictly in accordance with Ghanaian law, even as we continue to engage and dialogue on how we govern our country. We are aware of similar agitations in the past against the appointee of President Akufo-Addo. And we do know that a court case emanated from that particular engagement. As we speak, I am not aware that the court has determined the matter. So until this law is revoked or there is judicial pronouncement that says that this particular law is illegal and should be struck down, we believe that the president has acted correctly in respect of the appointment of Mr. Adumbotre. So we would appeal to CLOSAC to rescind their decision to go on strike. A strike action, we appreciate, is one of the mechanisms through which they can drive home their demands. They can compel government to take a look at their grievances. But in this particular instance, we do not believe that sufficient basis exists to go on strike, because it will be unfair to the people of Ghana who pay the wages of all public officials, including members of CLOSAC, that on the basis of a belief which is not backed by law, they go on strike. I don't think that we will be doing right by the people of Ghana if that position is sustained. So that will be it for the issue regarding CLOSAC and the births and deaths registry. The second issue that I wish to address is a press conference held by the Ghana Journal Association yesterday, in which it was claimed that 7 journalists had been attacked, and statements were made that sought to create the impression that there is some design by President Mahama and his government to attack journalists. It is a most regrettable narrative. We do not think that it is fair to President Mahama, it is fair to government, it is even fair to the Ghana Journal Association, or even to the journalists who are reported to have been attacked. Subsequent to the press conference, I have engaged the president of the Ghana Journal Association in my capacity as the minister responsible for government communications, which then means that journalists, as you are, who we work with, are part of the stakeholders that we need to engage regularly. I sought to find out exactly what informed the press conference and why other alternative approaches were not adopted to discuss the matters with a view to seeking redress for those who may have been affected. After the conversation, we agreed that early next week there should be a direct interaction between my office and the Ghana Journalists Association. So I hope that that meeting comes off, and at that meeting we'll be able to address any concerns that journalists may have. That said, I must also express dismay about the way that narrative was woven. It created a certain misleading impression about government and about President Mahama, which needs to be straightened. All of you are aware that President Mahama is an easygoing, down-to-earth, affable individual who relates very well with all manner of people. He is a member of the Ghana Journalists Association in good standing. So essentially, he is one of you. He is a member of the Inky fraternity. And therefore, he will be the last person to supervise a dispensation where journalists are attacked. But the way that the press conference was addressed and the way that the matters were couched created the impression that some journalists had perhaps said or written something that government was unhappy about, and therefore government was carrying out reprisals against them. But that is completely incorrect. It is not true, and nothing of the sort has happened. When I inquired from the Ghana Journalists Association president, he mentioned instances where at a recent Council of State elections, there was some scuffle and some journalists were roughed up. He also spoke about Erastus Asaidonko, who is reported to have been set upon by some illegal miners when he went there to cover their activities. But these are incidents involving persons who are acting unlawfully. For instance, illegal miners in the first place are breaking the law. So if in an attempt to report the activities, some of them attack a journalist, I'm not sure that you can lay the blame at the doorstep of President Mahama or the government. It is an act of criminality which should be dealt with in the same manner that if someone attacked me or assaulted me, it should be dealt with. If at the Council of State elections there is a scuffle and some misguided elements rough up journalists, for me it's a pure law and order issue which should be reported and dealt with by appropriate law enforcement agencies. I do not see how government can be roped in and the president can be said to have survived a situation where 7 journalists are attacked. If you close from work today and on your way, you engage in a dispute in traffic and somebody assaults you, I'm not sure that it would be fair to say that President Mahama is in power and you've been attacked, so he should be held responsible. If it is the case that you have reported that there is some wrongdoing in government or you've uncovered some unlawful acts by the president or any official in government, and because of that, government has organized its agents or assigns to assault you or harm you in any way, then you can say that the president has to be held liable or government has to be held liable. And in this country, we've seen instances like that, where Ahmed Swali, who was known to have been actively involved in uncovering corruption in football in Ghana, was gunned down in broad daylight. That matter remains outstanding and is yet to be resolved. We've seen instances where Edward Adeti, a reporter for GH1 and Star FM, reported some underhand dealings in the Upper East region, I believe, involving the minister of that region at the time. And for that reason, he had to flee because his life was in danger. He was being threatened by agents, known agents of the state. And there are other examples that we can cite. But if illegal miners attack a journalist or there's a scuffle and some journalists are robbed up, I don't see how it can be said that we have a situation where journalists are being attacked under President Mahama. These are violations of the law which should be reported. So the Ghana Journalists Association has every right to inquire about the status of investigations, but that inquiry should be addressed to law enforcement officials who have jurisdiction over these matters. President Mahama will not, under any circumstance, tolerate a situation where journalists are attacked for doing their work, especially in holding government accountable. Indeed, President Mahama himself has come under criticism, sometimes from members of his own party, for being overly tolerant of criticism. There were people who were fierce critics of his when in his previous guise as president of Ghana between 2013-2016, they reported on some matters. In one instance, he threw a cordon of protection around the journalists who had reported on a matter that had tarnished his reputation, even though it was found that the reportage was inaccurate. Unlike under President Akufo-Addo, where journalists had to flee the country because agents of the state were pursuing them, President Mahama threw a cordon of protection around journalists. Journalists who criticized him have been welcomed to his house, to his office. He has attended their book launches and extended a hand of courtesy and friendship to them. He has never shown hostility to any journalist at any point in time that he has been in public office or public life. Therefore, it is most unfair for this sort of narrative to be woven. But as I have indicated, early next week, we shall have formal engagements with the leadership of the Ghana Journalists Association, at which meeting I'm sure these matters can be ironed out. But if you are a journalist in Ghana, you have President Mahama's fullest assurance that merely because you report on his government, even in adverse ways, you are not going to face any reprisal. But please endeavor to use the appropriate channels to seek redress when other members of society harm you in any way. To every extent possible, government will lend its weight to efforts to seek redress in these matters. But we must distinguish between the actions of overzealous or errant security officials and other members of society and orchestrated attacks by government to punish, as it were, journalists for exposing wrongdoing. The latter is not happening, even if the former is extremely worrying. And we are interested in ensuring that all category of professionals, be they journalists or any other group of professionals, do not suffer for doing their work. So that clarity needs to be brought to the matters at hand. The last matter that I want to address relates to the reactivation of the sinking fund and honoring of Ghana's obligations to bondholders. 2 days ago, I issued a statement in which I conveyed news of a directive from President Mahama to the Ministry of Finance to take steps to settle maturing coupons of Ghanaian bondholders who suffered drastic haircuts under the domestic debt exchange program. So on Tuesday, 17th February, Monday, 17th February, I beg your pardon, an amount of 6 billion Ghana cedis or so was paid to these bondholders. Now, subsequent to the announcement of this payment and the announcement that the sinking fund has been reactivated, we have had some rebuttals from the MPP, whose officials have claimed that we have been able to do that as a government only because they left some buffers, and that it is not because of any specific intervention from President Mahama. I wish to place on record that this narrative is untrue. For officials of the former government to be able to say that these payments and honoring of these obligations have been the outcome of work that they did, they need to point specifically where those buffers were located. Because in order to be able to pay the money, you need to find it and lodge it somewhere. That is what you call a buffer, pending payment at a given date. Now, what we call the sinking fund, for short, is actually known as the debt service reserve account. That is where money is kept pending the payment of bondholders and other creditors. Now, this debt service reserve account has a cedi component and a dollar component. In other words, there are two accounts, one denominated in cedis, the other denominated in dollars. So because it is an account, it is possible to obtain a statement of account which shows you transactions over a certain period. So if the MPP officials are saying that we are able to pay these monies because they left money in the sinking fund, it should reflect when you take a cursory look at the statement of account. I have the statement of account before me. It is a voluminous document which shows all transactions that have occurred in the account over a certain period. Now, if you look at the dollar-denominated debt service reserve account, the records will show that the last time under the MPP, when there was a movement in the account, was 22nd October 2024. That was the last time that any money came in or left that account before the MPP left power. Now, if you check the balance in the account as of 22nd October 2024, it was $64,387. $64,387. We are talking about payments within the range of 6 billion Ghana cedis. And you and I know that $64,000 cannot amount to 6 billion Ghana cedis. Indeed, if you did a rough conversion using an exchange rate of 15 cedis, I'm sure you will get something in the region of about 800,000 Ghana cedis or so, if I'm not mistaken, or a little over 1 million Ghana cedis, if my mathematics is right. Now, on 31st January 2025, and everybody knows that on 31st January 2025, it was the NDC government that was in power, not so. An amount of $96,915,182 was lodged in the account by the finance minister. And it is clear where that money came from. It did not come from anything that the NPP had left in that account. Let me repeat it. The last time that there was any movement in the debt service recovery account, reserve account, I beg your pardon, under the MPP was 22nd October 2024. The balance on that day in the account was $64,387. The next time there was a movement was 31st January 2025. And a transfer of $96,915,182 was made into the account in order to ensure that we are able to meet the obligation that arose on 18 February 2025. That is the payment of maturing coupons to bondholders. Now, if you look at the CD-denominated debt service reserve account, you will find also that when the NDC took over on 7 January 2025, the last time that anything had happened in our account before the MPP left was 2nd January 2025. 2nd January 2025. The amount of money in the account on that date, 2nd January 2025, was 155,463,435 Ghana cedis. 155,463,435 Ghana cedis. Bear in mind that we are talking about payments in excess of 6 billion Ghana cedis. In addition to that, another 9 billion Ghana cedis is actually sitting in the fund as we speak to pay for maturing coupons in July and August. If you put it together, that is 15 billion Ghana cedis. Yet the balance when the MPP was sleeping was 155 million Ghana cedis. So how could they possibly say that they were the ones who built the buffer? What kind of buffer is this? If you have obligations amounting to 15 billion Ghana cedis, is the buffer you need for that 155 million Ghana cedis? And if you check the statement of account, which I'm willing to show you, you will see movements of monies into the account starting from somewhere around 23rd January 2025 by this government. And that is the reason why we were able to honor the obligations that arose from the domestic debt exchange program. As I speak to you, as of yesterday, 17th February 2025, the balance in the account was 9,270,537,727.67 cedis. That is the balance. And this balance is there as a buffer against debt service obligations in July and August this year. So it is clear on the basis of available facts and evidence that the claim by members of the MPP administration, which just left power, that we are able to honor these obligations because of buffers they built, is completely untrue. So I will end here and take any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.